If you're a parent or a grandparent that is dealing with anxiety or fear with your children, you'll want to tune in today. I've got a special guest on the show today that has written a book that teaches how to cope with fear and anxiety with children. And so you'll definitely want to take notes. I'm hoping to really get some great information. Welcome to the Coffee and Kidlit Show. My name is Travis D. Peterson. I'm actually the author of Ada and the Helpers, which is out now. And I actually have another book coming out soon that is at the printers called Never Ever Build a Blanket Fort. So I'm excited about that. But I hope you will help me welcome Christina Furnival to the show. Christina, thanks
Hello.
for coming. Christina
Hi.
is the author of Fear Not, and I always forget the subtitle, How to Face Your Fear and Anxiety Head On.
Head on. That's
Um,
right.
Thanks for coming on the show, Christina.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's early there. You said you're in San Diego.
I
So I
am. It's
appreciate
it's
that.
6 a.m., but ready to talk. So excited that you invited me on the show, Travis, and so happy to be here.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Furnival. As Travis said, I am a born and raised San Diegan, but I did spend my undergraduate and graduate schooling period in Nashville, Tennessee. So I have a soft spot for the South. And I am a mom of two kids. My daughter is 6 and she's about to start first grade. My son is 4.5 and he's in his final year of preschool. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor, which is the California licensed term for I'm a mental health therapist. And so I have been in the field since about 2009, and I've worked in a variety of settings, outpatient clinics, hospital programs. I've worked at a domestic violence center for a large nonprofit in San Diego. I've done parent education classes, and I've provided one-on-one behavioral support for families when their youth are going through some things. And most recently, I provide telehealth therapy, which is via video call to usually, definitely to adults, but usually to moms these days. Ever since having my own two kids and going through postpartum depression and anxiety myself after never having suffered with a mental health disorder before, I kind of refocused my clients' genre into moms and parents. So I do that in the evening, a couple days a week. And then during the day, I have my son home some of the days a week. And then I also am writing children's books. So I'm so excited to talk about Fear Not. Fear Not is the second book in my Capable Kiddos series. And so the idea with the series is to support children to be able to handle the common life ups and downs that are thrown their way. And Fear Not is book 2. So I'm so excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was your most recent book. It just came out this year,
Yes.
2022. And the first one, The Not So Friendly Friend, was that last year or when
Yes,
did that come out?
that was September 2021. So
Yeah,
just kind of half a year ago from Fear Not came out about half a year after the Not So Friendly
yeah.
Friend.
That's a quick turnaround. That's really
Yeah.
great. And we're going to have you on the show again in a couple of weeks to talk about that book. But
Yes.
today we're here to talk about Fear Not. So just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, if you would.
So Fear Not, I just love the little guy. He's so good. My
Yeah.
illustrator Katie did such a great job. The idea behind Fear Not was to support children through working through anxiety. Having worked with mainly youth before I became a mom, I saw anxiety frequently, the symptoms of anxiety, kiddos with anxiety challenges coming through my door. And a lot of times parents felt like, I don't know how to support them. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk to them about it even. And so I thought a children's picture book with rich and complex messages that are synthesized hopefully down into a much more palatable, child-friendly message that it has pictures and is rhyming and engaging, hopefully would not only provide this kind of psychoeducational tool for the kids, but also for their parents. And I found with both the books that I've written so far, the adults who read the books are like, oh, where was this when I was a kid? Like this could have saved me decades of challenge and struggle. And then I'm so glad that I have it to read to my child and to really start those conversations and open that door. So I wanted to take the angle of how to help my kid with anxiety and make it really practical and tangible. So it's got 3 steps in it that are pretty clean cut, and that empowers the child to recognize that anxiety happens. Everyone has it. There's no one that doesn't at moments have worries or fears. And so they're not alone in their experience, as well as that they're capable of handling it. Because I think when it comes to any emotional discomfort, our instinct is to push it away and to hide from it or to avoid it. And I think, especially in the culture now, and with different parenting approaches, there's this concept of minimizing discomfort, which is well intentioned because we want our kids to be healthy and happy. But in order to actually raise happy kids, you really need to raise resilient kids. Kids who, in the face of whatever comes their way, they feel like they can handle it and that they know how to deal with it. And so that's kind of the idea behind this book, was to support kids and parents in leaning in and facing head on their anxiety.
I really like the idea of taking these concepts and sort of simplifying it down to a children's book, because I'll be honest, even for myself, to be able to understand, complex terms and things when it comes to therapy and all these things, it can be hard for even me to understand. So to put it in a children's book, that makes it simple for anyone, and to be able to use that for your children is just, it's so great. So we're going to be getting into some pretty deep questions about your book, Fear Not. And so I hope if you're watching that you'll tune in, like I said, and hit the subscribe button if you like this kind of content. But Christina, I'm going to get right into the lightning round, which if you've seen any of our shows or any of my shows, then you may already know some of the questions that are coming. But tell us, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, but coffee. I know you're a coffee drinker. You don't have coffee right now. What are you drinking right now?
Mint tea.
Mint tea, because it's almost, or a little after 6:00 in the morning there. So anyways, what do you like in your coffee?
I drink coffee black usually, if I'm making it at home. But if I'm going to get it from somewhere and I'm already paying a large amount to buy coffee, I usually get a tall vanilla latte.
There you go. Yeah. What was your biggest fear as a kid?
My biggest fear as a kid, and actually probably still sits with me, and it's completely unfounded because I've never experienced anything related to this, is being in a vehicle and falling off like the edge of a cliff or a ravine or a bridge.
Yeah, I can connect with that. There's a lot of streets here in Norway where I live. It's kind of a mountainous area, and they don't really have the guardrails like you have in the States so much, and so it's quite terrifying sometimes to see that ravine right next to the road. But
Gosh, well, and even with all the guardrails here, I feel like they don't start as soon as they should. So I have to kind of focus on the like lane lines in order to not be like, there's not a wall right now. There's not a wall right now.
Right. Yeah. So what is what was your favorite children's book as a kid?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. I have so many.
Or you don't it doesn't have to be the top one, but one of your
Well,
favorites.
one of the ones when I was little, and I'm dropping the name of it right now, but the I'll love you forever, I'll love you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby will be. Do you know which book I'm
Okay.
talking about?
It sounds really familiar, but
It's got a
I'm not
kiddo on the
picturing it.
front with like toilet paper roll. And so I made sure we got it when we had our daughter 6 years ago. And I
Yeah.
literally can't read it. I cry every time. So I loved it as a kid, and I do not like it as an adult. It just makes me too sad.
Okay, so what's the last book that you read to your kids?
Well, we're reading right now. We're starting to do, so my daughter's 4 and my daughter's 6 and my son is 4. Starting to do where I read like easy readers with them, or sit down and start to open a chapter book. So we're actually reading 2 right now. One of them is more age appropriate, which is Junie B. Cheater Pants. It's about a little girl who cheated at school on a paper. And then the like real classic we just started is The Secret Garden.
Okay.
So we're a couple chapters in, and the verbiage is obviously a little advanced, and the themes I'm like, I used to love The Secret Garden. I didn't obviously think about both her parents dying and cholera. And so some of it, I'm like, I might skip over parts of it. But it's been really
Yeah.
cool for them to sit still and let me read and them just take it in.
I've been reading some of Mark Twain's books to my oldest. He's 7, and yeah, there's some topics in there and some words that I have to kind of skip over. So yeah, I know how that is. It's
Mhm.
definitely probably way more advanced for him than I should be reading. But I'm thinking, I wonder what age the kids were that read this, way back when he wrote the books. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get on back to Fear Not. And I do have just a question, because we've been going through some pretty rough years lately with the pandemic, and also just the way the economy is going right now, but specifically about the pandemic. How do you feel like that has impacted kids?
It has impacted our kids in so many ways, and it's really specific to each family and each kind of age group the children are in. I have felt so fortunate that our family went through the roughest part, obviously, of the pandemic in those first year and a half before my kids had entered schooling. So for as far as my kids were concerned, they just weren't going to preschool a couple days a week anymore, but it really didn't impact them. We didn't
Hmm.
tell them. They had like no idea for a long time that anything was even happening.
Yeah.
For elementary aged kids, that was really hard, especially lower elementary, because then all of a sudden they've started school, they know the routine, they've developed friendships outside their family friend units, and they're used to going and having that in-person interaction. All of a sudden they're expected to sit in front of a screen for 7 hours and
Hmm.
participate on a computer that they probably haven't been allowed to touch before this time. And then you look at the older kids, especially middle school and high school, where friends are life. The parents, I heard from so many parents questions about how do we balance this, because we obviously want to keep our family safe, but our children's mental health and well-being is so intertwined at these ages with their social life, and we can't just kind of close down, but we need to close down. And so I know their parents had a lot of questions over what do we do and how do we handle this. And then for the kids, it was just really hard and really confusing. It was scary. So it was a big life shift. There was a lot of fear, especially in that first year or so, of the kind of nebulous nature of the coronavirus and what was it going to do to our family? What was it going to do to my friends' families? Are we going to experience loss? And actually, a lot of kids have lost people. I was looking up this morning to find most recent statistics, and this was back from December, so it's 8 months behind. But as of December, in the US, over 140 children have lost a single parent caregiver or two parent or grandparent caregivers. And
Wow.
that's life disrupting, life changing, kind of unimaginable. No one that's been alive right now has gone through anything like this. And we're all kind of figuring it out as we go. And as parents, we may not be modeling the healthiest anxiety approach to all of this as well, because we're in it just as much as our kids are. So
Right.
the impact on our kids has been immense.
Yeah, I think a lot about, I guess, the older kids, especially the ones who are graduating in, back in 2020, 2021, maybe they completely missed their graduation, and how that must have affected them. And our kids, my kids are about the same age as yours. Our oldest is 7 and our youngest is 4. Um, but half their lives were spent with everyone wearing masks.
Mhm.
And I've just kind of wondered how would that affect them. Would they kind of expect, like, this is what everybody does, it's
Right.
it's
I
what
do.
they're kind of growing up with.
Yeah, I do think it's been normalized in a lot of ways, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because you want your children to not be freaked out by it, but you also don't want it to
Hmm.
become normal that they forget life before masking. And I know my kids were playing and they're like, let's go play school. And I'm like, oh, so cute. And I'm watching them play and they're like, oh, we need our masks. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad that that's now like associated and wrapped in and tied in with their
Yeah.
school. But that's also
Yeah.
how children process. They process through play. So it's a good spot for them to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, and even with our youngest is deaf, so she has cochlear implants and she's able to hear pretty well with those. But to have a mask over our faces, our mouths, so that she can't actually lip read or anything was tough as well. So definitely some challengers there. So tell us, Christina, what kind of signs should we look for in our kids? Signs of fear or anxiety that because I know some are probably very obvious and some are not so obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the more obvious signs would be constantly worrying, right? The what ifs, okay, well, but if I do that, then this is going to happen. And if that happens, then this might happen, right? So I'm just going to not do this because I don't want this whole cascade to occur. Those sorts of thoughts and feelings expressed. The kids who are showing concern about a lot of different scenarios or situations that your family is about to do. If they're showing avoidance, they really don't want to go to school. They don't want to go to mama's house. They don't want to do this or that because something makes them nervous or they're uncomfortable. Those are kind of the more glaring signs of underlying anxiety, whether or not it's an anxiety disorder, the feelings of anxiety. The less obvious signs, but if you look back, you can be like, oh yeah, are notable changes based on who you know your child to be. So if they're suddenly having more tantrums, if they're more irritable, if they're more on edge, if they are expressing that their stomach hurts a lot all the time, but there's not really a medical reason, or they've got headaches that they didn't used to have, if they're more aggressive in ways that they weren't before, if they're having crying spells, those are good signs that something has shifted in them or their thoughts are impacting them in a way that maybe they're not expressing out loud to you. They might have extra difficulty concentrating. They might all of a sudden have insomnia or nightmares. They might be bedwetting. They might be hungrier than usual or less hungry than usual. And so body changes, mood changes, those sorts of things they happen more slowly or gradually, so they're harder to recognize. But if you kind of identify who your child is and how they typically are and look at how they're functioning now, then you can usually, okay, actually that's a bigger shift than I thought. And that can be a sign that anxiety is happening for them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, as we are raising our kids, there may be things that we kind of regularly say that could kind of trigger this anxiety as well. I've heard things like, saying "be careful" all the time can kind of trigger things. Is there anything else like that you would say, yeah, parents should probably kind of avoid those, triggers, so to speak?
Right. Well, we're always all doing our best, right? And so
Yeah,
that's where the be careful and those sorts of phrases come along, because we want our kids to be careful. We don't want them to get
right.
hurt. The wording that has been kind of talked about, that the phrasing be careful has been brought up on social media a lot and in different blog posts. And the wording that's more preferred is pay attention to your feet. Do you feel if this, surface that you're standing on is wiggly or solid? Or can you feel the ropes in your hands, or does it feel slippy? So giving kind of more awareness cues to our kids versus blanket be careful. Also,
Mhm.
the fact that sometimes it just goes in one ear and out the other, which so does the other phrasing too. If our kids are in a focused state, they're not going to necessarily hear our guidance. But if they're hearing be careful all the time, yeah, like why is the world really uncareful? Like a really dangerous place? What do I need to be doing? What does that mean? How do I be careful? So that can definitely spawn some of those kind of what if thoughts, or just like a heightened sense of hypervigilance of like, okay, the world around me is not dangerous. And so along those lines, as a parent, if you're constantly telling them to watch out, this is really dangerous, or you could hurt yourself, or you could kill yourself, or this or that, like the world, which already feels quite scary, feels even scarier. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes it has a lot more to do with our own fears and anxieties, and we project it onto them because we're really trying to protect them from our own fears and anxieties, but it actually is like giving them what we worry about. And so with that, modeling is so big. And this is a big part of Fear Not in my story as well. And in the back, I also have conversation starters and discussion questions, is this idea of shaping your relationship with anxiety. Because if we live and model that fear is something to be avoided, that anxiety is something that's really uncomfortable, and we want to not deal with it, I'd rather not deal with any challenging situations or things that make me uncomfortable, then our kids are going to feel that same way too. Whereas
Mhm.
anxiety and fear are natural emotions. They're protective emotions in response to danger. They're there to save your life. But in the day, in the world, in the society that a lot of us live in, we're not in constant danger. And so it's like our sensor is oversensitive, and like our fire alarm is overactive. And when we burn the toast and it smokes a tiny bit, the fire alarm thinks there's a fire in the house. And that's how our anxiety feels for a lot of us. And so if we can shape our relationship and our children's relationship with anxiety to say, it's actually like a really good thing, and we can listen to the message that it gives us, and then we can be intentional in how we respond to it. So let's say that fire alarm goes off in your house because you're making toast. Likely, because you know you're making toast, you're not just going to run out of your house yelling fire. You're going to assess the information, which is, okay, well, I'm making toast. That was a little bit of smoke. I'll kind of fan it a bit, thanks for letting me know I'm going to turn you off now, or like reset you, whatever I need to do. That's how we should be approaching our anxiety, is like, I feel on edge. My heart is beating really fast. I kind of feel like something bad is going to happen. Okay, what is the evidence that proves this, and what is the evidence that disproves this? There's no really reason I should feel this way right now, so my body must just be on edge. Thank you, body, but I'm not going to take that to mean something bad's about to happen, or I'm not going to take it to mean I need to do this or that. So you can model that with your kids and kind of walk through, I'm really on edge because I've got to call Travis, and I'm going to be on the internet and it's live and it makes me nervous. And what do you think I should do? How should I handle my nerves? How can I work through them? Because it's okay that I feel nervous, because it means I want to do a good job. But I also know it's a little uncomfortable. So maybe I could do some deep breathing. Do you think that would help me? And kind of showing them that, yeah, we can try and take the edge off. That's fine. But I'm not going to cancel my call because I'm nervous about being on live television, right? So the avoidance, as parents, we often kind of contribute to our kids' avoidance because we really don't want them uncomfortable. But the message that sends is, what you're afraid of is, yes, in fact, scary. So much so that I'm scared of it, and I'm scared of your feelings that you might feel because of it. So let's all avoid it together. And so the best we can to empathize with our kids and validate that they feel a certain way, while gently helping them to lean into their fears or to face their fears, is the best approach that we could do.
Yeah, it's really interesting that our kids' anxieties may actually be our own anxieties being projected onto them, and so we really need to deal with our own fears and anxious thoughts first. That's really interesting. So, in your book, Fear Not. By the way, I have the link down in the description for anyone who's interested in that if they want to take a look at it deeper. You start with what you should not do with those thoughts. If you could just kind of walk us through those, and I have one page up on the screen here
Perfect.
that we can take a look at.
I don't need to hold it up. Awesome.
Yeah.
So this story follows this character, and he shares with your child and with you that he's had anxiety before, and he's going to tell you what he tried to do and the things that didn't work, and he's going to tell you what did work. So this is the what didn't work. I'll read it and then I'll kind of talk about it. So what did I do when fear entered my head? I'll tell you what didn't work. Then I'll tell you what did. I kept it a secret, which felt like protection, but I was alone without help or connection. I hoped that if I could pretend it was gone, that it simply would leave me alone and move on. So I tried to ignore it, to push it away, but this didn't work, and it felt here to stay. It took over my focus, and that didn't fix it. It was all I could think of. I just couldn't mix it. And I love what Katie's done here with the door imagery, because he's just like trying to slam the door on anxiety and say, look, the door's shut. I won't have anxiety anymore. And you can see it then at the bottom kind of making its way back out. And so what he's trying to do is what a lot of our kids and what a lot of us do, which is we ignore or we push it away. We pretend that we're fine. We put on a brave face. We don't want to let anyone know. And the problem with all these things is emotions. I like to think of them like if you're swimming in a pool and you've got like a beach ball. Have you ever laid on the beach ball and tried to submerge it and just like keep it under? I don't know if you have, is what I used to do as a kid, but you can't do it. It always goes bloop, and it just like finds its way back up. And I feel like that's how emotions are. When we suppress them and try and pretend that things are okay when they're not, they come out, they leak, they find a way out. And usually it's in really inconvenient and inopportune times and ways. And so this kiddo was trying to handle it and be tough and handle it by himself. And actually, when you have fear and anxiety, the bravest thing you can do is call it out, to share it with your parents, to tell it with a teacher, whatever safe, trusted adult that you have, because they can help you. Hopefully they won't dismiss you. But so parents, please do not dismiss your kids' anxieties. And we won't understand a lot of what they're going through. But the best thing as parents that we can do is to listen, and then to empathize and validate and support. Just be there for your kids. So that might sound like, I'm scared of monsters in my room. And our instinct might be like, there's no monsters. You're fine. You're fine. Go to sleep. Right. But that doesn't help our children feel like they can talk to us. And it doesn't help them. It doesn't give them tools. So a better way to handle that would be, I'm so sorry that you're feeling scared that there's monsters in the room. Now, you obviously still can say that there's not, but there's a nuance there of, I'm hearing you, I get you, and I'm here for you. So I'm so sorry that you're feeling scared. That's really uncomfortable. I feel scared sometimes at night too. I like to turn on all the lights. So I understand that. That doesn't feel good. I want you to know there's not monsters. There's no such thing as monsters, but I get that you're still feeling scared about it. So what could we do to help you? Should we sing a song that you like? Should we imagine what we're going to do tomorrow? What kind of happy imagery can we put in your head? What can we imagine? Or what could we say to the monster that you're feeling? Because there's not real monsters, but if you're feeling like there is one, what could we say to them that might make them go away? And so supporting your kids in that way. So going back to your question of the things that don't work for our kids, we need to express that. And that needs to kind of be a continuous conversation, because the themes that they're going to hold in life are different as they get older. They're not just anxiety themes, but when it does come to anxiety, we want our kids to know that speaking about it actually makes it feel less scary. And I think a lot of times we hold things in because we feel if we talk about it, it'll feel more real. But the thing is, it already feels real to them. So actually talking about it kind of deflates it. It's like they pop the monster balloon in their mind, and it kind of just goes down a little bit because they've named it out loud. So the things that don't work are repressing in that way.
When I'm looking at this spread again in your book, my immediate thought is that's just like a man. men, we tend to hold in things and not share, right? Do you think it's the same for both women and men, or is it more prevalent in men? What do you think?
I do think it's the same. I think, in at least in American culture, there's an expectation of this kind of superhero mom in particular. And so I think a lot of moms don't share how hard their day-to-day life is, how heavy the mental load is. They do a lot of the invisible work, or the dad, whoever's the primary parent, does the invisible work. And that's tough. That's taxing. And I think there's this culture of we love busyness. We love productivity. And it's kind of like, you don't say how hard things are, because then that means you're not actually as flawlessly productive as you want to appear to be. So I think and I think culturally men kind of get the bad rap for not being emotional or not knowing how to express their emotion. But I would say if there's a household where the culture is to not express emotion, and they have a son and a daughter, then both kids are going to learn that. It might come out in different ways. It might look different. But yeah, so it's probably both in men and women, just evident a little differently.
Yeah. So after discussing what doesn't work with fear, then you get into the 3 steps of coping with anxiety. So could you just walk us through those steps?
Sure
And I'm going
thing.
to bring that up on the screen as well.
Awesome.
Step 1.
Step 1. I love this. And so if you have the book, or if you're going to get the book, there's an earlier picture where the anxiety monster is growing and kind of following him. And so I love that this is the parallel kind of imagery to that. And Katie's having him, this little boy, put anxiety in its place instead of having it grow bigger and following him. So step 1, first, notice, accept, and acknowledge the fear. Now describe it out loud in a voice strong and clear. Because by voicing our thoughts, we strip fear of its power. We strengthen ourselves, and then fear starts to cower. So that's step 1. And that's kind of going back to what we were just saying about what doesn't work is hiding and pushing away and avoiding. If we lean into our fears, we name it. I'm feeling really fearful right now. I'm feeling really anxious. I feel nervous. I feel on edge. That helps you to immediately feel a little bit better because you've labeled it and you've labeled it in a way that your parent or your caregiver will understand and be able to hopefully step in and support you. And then also going back to the parent side of things is that modeling. We need to support our children to develop the language around these uncomfortable feelings so they're not just sitting in discomfort that they can't identify or describe. So, oh my gosh, I see that you're like fidgeting a lot. I'm just wondering if you're feeling nervous or anxious, maybe. And that's over years, as your kids are growing up, those feeling face charts, there's all sorts of different ways you can incorporate and teach about feelings, names, and labels. But so that's the step one, is voicing it out loud. And you can see how stronger that boy feels as he's reclaiming his power from fear. And he's saying, you don't own me. I know who you are. I'm identifying you, and I'm the boss. I'm the boss of myself, even if I feel fear or anxiety. So that's step one.
What would you say about a child who is not so eager to talk about their feelings, or maybe they, even if you're trying to kind of pull it out of them, they're just, I don't want to talk about it, that kind of thing, even as a young kid?
Yeah, so young kids are hard in that they may not know how to describe it, or they may know what they're feeling, but they may not know why. And then older kids, you may get a lot more pushback. And so if you're the parent of one of those children, I would think the best thing for you to do is just keep that door of communication open and say, hey, I noticed that you're feeling a little off. I'm wondering if you're nervous because school's starting next week. I'm here for you if you want to talk about it. And you also can share your own experiences. I remember being really nervous for the first day of school. I sometimes would feel like I didn't want to go, or my stomach would really hurt. But then once I got there was just so much excitement around it. I would always make at least one friend. And then I'd come home from the day just buzzing. And it was like my nervous feelings in my body just switched into excitement feelings in my body. And just kind of, but maybe that's just me. And then kind of move on. And they might eventually open up or approach you. But if you're like, tell me why you're nervous right now, that's not probably going to work.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've talked about the first step and sort of recognizing your thoughts and let's go into step 2 then.
Step 2. And now let's remember, the feeling will pass. It will not hang around, because feelings don't last. Our nice feelings and yuck ones all act just the same. They come for a while, then they go on their way. And I think this is huge, even for us, because when we're in a bad mood, or when we're scared, or when we're fearful or anxious, there's this sense that it tells you that this is how life's going to be now. You're in this, and that you're going to feel uncomfortable forever. And the reality is that's just not true. Feelings come and they go. They ebb and they flow. They're like waves in the ocean. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's temporary and you can handle it. And there's 3 P's of positive psychology. One of them is personal, one of them is pervasiveness, and one of them is permanent. And if you're having a rough go and you believe that it has to do with who you are at your core, that it is involved in all the contexts of your life, and that it's forever, you're going to feel absolutely hopeless. And if we can switch your thinking around to recognize that maybe it has to do with an action, but not who you are at your core. Maybe it's only in one context of your life. It's not pervasive. And actually, most everything is pretty temporary. Then you feel like, okay, this still isn't fun, but it's not like doom and gloom for the rest of my life. And so teaching this to kids at a young age about feelings come and they go. There's also a book called The Way I Feel by Janan Kane. And there's a line I always repeat. It's the final words of the book. But feelings come and feelings go. I never know what they'll be. Silly or angry, happy or sad. They're all a part of me. And I repeat that to my kids all the time, because they feel like, oh, I'm so mad at my sister, and I'm always going to be mad at her, and I don't like her now, and I wish she wasn't my sister. And the reality is you're going to feel differently in like 2 minutes, possibly. I could set a timer. Right. It's going to be really short, But so that's this idea with an uncomfortable feeling like anxiety and fear, that it's short-lived. It's absolutely short-lived, and you can handle it. And so this is an really empowering step for kids.
I really like Katie, and by the way, this is Katie Dwyer, who is the illustrator for your book or for the whole series, actually. And I really like this picture of sort of these anxious thoughts coming in one ear, and then it changes going out the other ear. It's just a really great way of illustrating that point that they will not stick around forever.
Yeah, thank you. I think she did
Yeah,
such an amazing job.
yeah. And then step 3.
Step 3. The last step is to pick out our favorite new tool to help cope and to manage to regain our cool. Slow, deep breathing is a tool to take charge of our mind, soothing heads, hearts, and tummies, leaving fears far behind. So this step is all about the tools. This is the lead in into it. And then in the next page, it gives some more examples for kids. But the idea there, so now we know if we name our feelings out loud, that takes away some of the weight and heaviness of them. And we know that our feelings are going to come and go. So they're not going to be around forever. And step
Mhm.
3 is, okay, what tools and coping skills can I use to help me in the meantime? Again, kind of just to take off that edge. Coping skills aren't to make a feeling go away, because that's not the goal, because we can handle our feelings. But they are
Mhm.
to help us work through them without feeling so stressed or so taxed by them. So deep breathing is absolutely the number one skill that kids can learn. And adults really could learn it too, because I think when we think of deep breathing, we think of like you do when the doctor is, listening to
Yeah.
your heart and your airways. You're like, okay, breathe in, breathe out. And really, that's when you're filling your lungs. A true deep breath that's really going to help change what's going on inside of you and move you from fight or flight to rest and digest is a deep breath that goes all the way down into your belly, into your diaphragm. And if you're laying on your back, that's a really good way to practice. You naturally breathe into your belly when you're laying down on your back. Whereas when we're standing up, when we're much more inclined to breathe into our chest. And you can kind of feel the difference if you breathe in. You can feel your chest expand and your belly hasn't changed. But if you are conscious, it's hard. And so it's kind of hard to teach kids, but you practice it with them, is to breathe into your belly and not move your chest. So you want your belly to fill up like a balloon when you breathe in and then to deflate when you breathe out. So that's the kind
Mhm.
of technique of it. And then what actually, when it comes to counts of breathing, is you want your exhale to be longer than your inhale. And that really helps your body to feel calm. And so I say 4, 5, 6. So breathe in for a count, breathe in your whole breath in a count of 4. So that's kind of fast. And then I say to hold it for 5 and then to exhale for 6. And if you do that just a handful of times, you can feel your shoulders lower. You can just feel your whole state calming down. Sometimes you yawn afterwards because you're really getting your body in a much more relaxed state. And that's part of it too for kids, is they're like, I did a deep breath and it did not work. You're like, you did one deep breath. Yeah, you're right. That wouldn't work. It couldn't, because it's not enough. So we have to do more. And so if you're practiced at 4, 5, 6, my kids and I will trace up to our fingertips. So you breathe in and then you hold, then you breathe out. You breathe in, you hold, and we breathe out. So you do it on both hands. So then you're at least getting 10 of those style breaths, which still might not be enough, but it's at least enough to kind of lower some of the intensity of whatever their emotions are, or their tantrum, or their anxiety. And then in the book, it talks about reading and writing. So there are distraction coping skills that you can use. And the difference between that and avoidance is these are coping skills just to kind of take the edge off in the meantime while your feelings are really strong. They're not to take you away from your anxiety itself. They're not to say, if you're afraid of going to school, don't go to school and come home and do a puzzle. But okay, in the lead up to going to school, you're feeling really anxious. Maybe a puzzle might help you get out of your negative thinking spiral and more
Yeah.
into your body or more into your activity that you're doing. And then mindfulness is a really big approach to anxiety as well, to support you.
And so in between the what not to do for coping with fear and the 3 steps for dealing with anxiety, there's something that happens to the boy in the story of Fear Not. And just want to bring that screen up here so we can see it. And it's I think it's such a cool change or switch that happens in this story. So and it's all about dealing with senses. So how do the senses affect us in dealing with these anxious thoughts?
So anxiety is felt in our bodies, but we often are just so much stuck in our minds and in our thoughts. And mindfulness is so helpful because it pulls you out of your head and into your body more. So I'll read this and then I'll explain a little more.
Yeah.
Then one windy day, when I noticed the breeze, I started to feel that my mind was at ease. All my senses woke up as the air passed me by. I was touching and feeling the swirls of the sky. Then my smell, taste, and sight were also turned on, and most of all, sound with a lovely bird song. So we have our five senses. We've got our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste, and our feeling. And so this page, I just love what Katie did. Because like you said, in the earlier pages, you're seeing a lot of that purple and dark and the anxiety monster. And then all of a sudden you open to the spread and it's just light and airy. And you can see those really cool waves in the background that she's used consistently in this story to tell of comfort and calmness and tranquility. And so he's noticing his body. The breeze kind of took him by surprise. And then he started paying attention to more of his body, and he got out of his mind. And there's a really, really popular grounding technique. And grounding is the idea of centering yourself and calming yourself down. And it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's based on your senses. And our family, we do it enough that now we just like to do it when we're out and about. Just it's like a fun and interesting thing to do, and it just helps you be really present. And so the idea is you look for 5 things that you can see. And so if you're thinking really scary, spiraling, what if thoughts, all of a sudden that's interrupted by, okay, I see a guitar, I see a computer, I see my mug, and you're kind of having to think and you're using your brain in a different way, but it's also helping you be super, super present. So it's 5 things you can see. It's 4 things you can hear, which sometimes that can be hard, but usually you can identify like smaller sounds that maybe you wouldn't have noticed, your brain hadn't registered, like leaves on the sidewalk. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, and you could switch the hear and touch if you wanted, because touch might be easier to identify. So that's like, I can feel my clothing on my skin. I can feel the earbuds in my ears. I can feel the seat underneath me. I can feel my foot on the leg of the seat, so identifying what you can feel, see, hear, and then smell and taste are usually, you might end up coming out with the same things depending on your locale. But so let's say we're by the beach, we might smell sand. We might smell the salty beach water. If you're on a farm, you might smell certain different things like the produce or the manure. And then what you taste, so I'm tasting mint tea in my mouth currently. So usually the last 2 are a little more, the range is less, but the idea is probably takes about 5 minutes to go through this. And it's 5 minutes that you're not thinking those thoughts and your brain is engaged in a different way and your body is engaged and you're in the moment. And it just kind of puts a pause button on whatever it was that you were worrying about. And so mindfulness in research has been shown to be hugely effective with anxiety, depression, whatever sort of mental health issues you're going through.
My understanding with this is that often with anxiety, you can kind of feel like everything is dark and that you're in this tunnel. And so by finding these things around you and using your different senses, it kind of grounds you and sort of brings you back to where you are, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So once again, Fear Not by Christina Furnival. We have a couple more questions, so don't go anywhere yet. But if you're interested in this book by Christina, just go into the description and you'll find a link there. Christina, one last main question for you. What advice would you give to parents whose child is really overwhelmed with fear?
Well, first of all, I would say, I'm sorry. It's really, really hard. If your child is overwhelmed with anxiety and fear, you probably feel paralyzed of how to support them and how to be there for them. So hopefully this chat today has been helpful. But there are therapists all over who are trained in children therapy, often play therapy, to really be a support to your kids. They know what to do. They know how to help you, help them as well. Medication is a support if needed. I am not a big fan of medicating children. However, some kids do need that supplement to therapy. And it just kind of helps them to regulate their brain processes so that they can use the skills that they're learning in therapy. My book, Fear Not, is a great resource. There are a lot of fabulous books on anxiety as well. So you could get a whole handful and kind of pick and choose your favorite techniques from them. But I'm here for you if you're going through that. You can find me at ChristinaFurnival.com and shoot me a message, or on Instagram. And how can someone reach me? Hi. You can shoot me a message on my website or on Instagram or on Facebook, and I'll respond, and we can have a chat. And I've helped people identify and find therapists in their area. It's hard, and you're not alone, especially if your children are going through something like that. So I'm here for you. You can find me, like I said, at ChristinaFurnival.com, or I have 2 Instagram accounts. One of them is for moms and parents to work on their own mental health, and it is This Is Real Life Mama. And then my children's books account, as well as children's mental health account, is Capable Kiddos Books. So come find me. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Christina, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been really great to hear from you. And I hope some parents who watch this are really encouraged by what you have shared today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Travis. It's been so fun to talk with you today.
Absolutely. And again, we're going to have you back in 2 weeks for your other book, The Not So Friendly Friend.
Yes.
You have that with you?
I do.
Yeah. And what's the subtitle for that one?
The Not So Friendly Friend, How to Set Boundaries for Healthy Friendships.
Yeah. So that's going to be another great conversation with Christina. And actually, both the links for both of those books are in the description if you're interested in checking those out. And next week, I'll actually have a mother and daughter team. Christina may be familiar with this book, The Acorn and the Oak, by Rhonda Accardo, and illustrated by her daughter, Jessica Waterstraat. Waterstraat, I think is how it's pronounced. Really beautiful book, but it actually deals with sort of mourning the loss of a family member. And the illustrations are gorgeous, and the story itself is just really well written. And so I'm looking forward to talking to both of these ladies next week. So I hope you will join me. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. The link for this show is also in the description, so you can be notified when that comes up. So again, Christina, great talking to you. And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.